About 4 years ago, my parents moved to a home in Minneapolis. We knew nothing about the home's past, but right after they moved in, strange things began to happen. These odd things were only noticed by my mother and my nephew. My stepfather never saw or heard anything strange, and my mother was afraid to tell him, for fear that he would put the house up for sale immediately. Mom would notice that the knickknacks in her china cabinet would be missing. They would show up again in the china cabinet, in a different spot. One day she was coming downstairs and could hear the television on. She thought to herself, that darn kid left the TV on. And as she rounded the corner, it clicked off by itself. She was vacuuming one day and turned the vacuum off, but it kept going on for about 30 seconds. Basement had motion detectors that would go blip blip when they detected motion. These were going off so often that eventually you didn't even hear from them anymore. Mom would often feel presence watching her when she was downstairs doing laundry. The home had strange things in it, such as holes in the walls that had been plastered up. One closet had the back of it plastered up, and I used to tease her that maybe a body was back there. My nephew, who lives with my parents, used to complain, not be scared, but just complain that there was someone in the room with him. They lived in this house for about 2 years. When I was 16, a long time ago, I went to visit friends who lived in Medicine Hat, Alberta, Canada. I was to stay with them for 1 week. My first night there, they showed me the guest room in the basement. I was not a jumpy kid, but was uneasy about the accommodations. Once in the basement, you had to cross all the way across the other end, turn down the hallway, and the bedroom was down that hall, with a bathroom directly across from it. My first night there, I tried to convince the dog to come downstairs and sleep with me. He would have none of that. I resorted to carrying the poor creature downstairs, but once we got down there, he bolted back upstairs. It didn't help that the walls were covered in animal heads, deer, elk, etc. This was, and still is, absolutely horrifying to me. More horrifying, in fact, than meeting a ghost face to face. Anyhow, I slept down there the first night without incident. A day or two later, I went into the laundry room, which was also in the basement. Hanging behind the door was the creepiest little puppet. It was actually a marionette that I have ever seen. Now, I'm not going to say this for the sake of dramatics. This hideous thing would be swinging back and forth every time I went into the laundry room. It would stop swinging when it was facing me. If I went into the laundry room with anyone else, it was completely still and usually facing the wall. I could not and still can't figure that one out. Anyhow, one night I decided to take the dog for a walk. Actually, I was sneaking out to smoke a cigarette, and out I went. I was gone for 1 or 2 hours, and when I returned home, the house was dark. Someone was showering in the upstairs bathroom, but the kids were in bed. I decided to go downstairs and get ready for bed. The lights were off. I turned them on and went downstairs to my room. As I headed into my room, I noticed that the bathroom across the hall had a light on, and the door was shut closed. I didn't think anything about it, but walked into the room and took my nightgown, toothbrush, etc. out of the suitcase. I turned around and the door to the bathroom stood wide open. The light was off. I thought to myself, geez, I must be in trouble, but carried on getting ready for bed. I eventually made my way upstairs to face the music. My host was still in the bathroom, and I sat in the upstairs living room waiting for him. He eventually came out of the bathroom and came and sat with me. I asked if Darlene was mad at me or something. His reply was that Darlene went to Calgary tonight. They had made an offer on a truck that was for sale, and it was accepted. Darlene had been gone for hours. He could sense that I was puzzled and asked me why. I simply explained what happened downstairs. One thing that always troubled me is the very matter of fact that he stated to me it must have been the wind, and got up and left me sitting there. How could the wind just turn on and off and open a door? I slept on the couch upstairs for the remainder of my trip. In Conway, South Carolina, I lived on Cates Bay Road. You could tell the house out from all the other ones because it was the only one on a dirt road, and all the other houses were by the highway. We lived with my grandma, so the house was pretty old. Her parents and her parents' parents also lived in it, and so on. All in all, the house has been through 13 generations. The house was also built on top of slave headquarters. Whoever built the house thought it would be charming to leave some of the quarters still standing. My grandma always told me that the house was haunted, and I didn't even believe her until one night when a date was dropping me off, and we sat in the driveway for a little while. We got quiet, and all of a sudden we heard a white male voice say, "Get back to work." Then we heard a whispering sound, and a dish or glass break. I then told my date goodnight, and ran inside. When I got there, I saw that it was only my grandma in the home. Of course, I knew my dad would never behave like that. All grandma did was look at me and say, "I told you it was true." My grandma told me that my mom used to lay in bed and listen to an African American woman sing hymn. Grandma said it was never frightening to her until she found out that there was no African American woman living, or any woman who sung like that for that matter, in the neighborhood. The kitchen to the quarters must have been my grandma's room, because it has a very distinct smell of something haunted. The house almost caught fire one day. Mom was cooking peas on the stove and put it on low. She was gone for about 5 minutes, and when she came back, the knob had been turned high, and the pot was on fire. When Grandma died, we moved out of the house and out of Conway. Too many strange things for us to handle. Clay, Alabama is a fairly new town. Most of it was farming land, and nothing but swamps before the new middle school and high school went in, about anywhere from 9 to 12 years ago. Things haven't been the same since in the new high school. It is reported that the lockers open and slam by themselves, and you don't want to be out in Clay at night. You may see that Indians used to live there before the land was bought and sold off piece by piece. In the middle of the night, sometimes you could hear strange noises outside your houses, and the dogs and other animals in the area will act out for no reason at all. Is this the work of a ghost? No real investigation has been done there, but for us who live there, we know the truth. We all know that Clay is indeed a haunted town. That is not the most haunted place, though. I live in the middle-sized town of Grayson Valley, and I've personally had enough experiences to tell you that I personally believe that my house is haunted. My first experience came when I was about 7 or 8 years of age. I remember it was a school night, and I just laid down to bed. I don't even remember much about it, but I remember the room becoming very cold, and it felt as if someone sat down on the end of my bed. I laid there scared to move at first, but when I looked up, there was no one there. Ever since then, things have been weird. At first, I shrugged off that experience and told myself it wasn't true. Boy, was I wrong. It happened again when I was about 10 years or so. I was helping my mom carry in some groceries, and as I approached the top of the stairs, I swore I heard the sound of children laughing. I immediately shrugged it off and told myself that I imagined it, but my next encounter would leave me speechless. When I was 13, my grandmother, who I was very close to, passed away. Right after she passed, things seemed different. At first, it was little things, like throwing things down and then coming back in later to find that they were gone, and had somehow been put in their right places, in small things like that. But then something out of the ordinary happened. One night, about 2 or 3 days after my grandmother's funeral, I was lying in bed when I happened to notice something shining on the wall. I noticed that it was about the size of a small tomato, and it was a very beautiful blue color. I don't think anything about it, because I figured that it must have been the moonlight shining off of something. But it kept coming back. Night after night it would appear, and always in the general area over my door, just slightly over my wall. Then one night, I got up to see where the light was coming from. I couldn't find a source anywhere. The way the moonlight was shining, it couldn't have been that. And there was nothing in sight for it to shine off of or anything like that. I was totally freaked out, but by the next night it was gone, and I never saw it again. The last great encounter I had was this past summer. I was about 14, and on my way to 15. I had remembered I had just gotten home from school and was doing my chores, which included vacuuming the living room. There was this black fan that was sitting on the floor and was plunged into the wall. I had to unplug it to unplug the vacuum in. The other square plug was being used by a lamp. I began to vacuum. Shortly after I turned around to unplug the vacuum, I noticed that the lamp was unplugged and the black fan had been plugged in and was running on high. I was absolutely terrified. I ran in my room and shut my door and didn't come out till my dad came home. I'm an only child, and no one else was in the house with me when the event occurred, which places no one there who could have plugged the fan in, other than a ghost. I have since had other experiences that involve strange noises or talking that sounds distant. Sometimes, though, I wonder if there's something more in my house than just me. I don't know much about the history of my house or the property for which it sits on. I only know that before us, my house had 2 previous owners. First, a young couple with 3 children, and when she got pregnant again, they had to move. And after them, an older couple moved in. Then after that, we moved in. The house is only about 20 to 30 years old. I know that much, but unfortunately that is all I know at the given time. Maybe my experiences have something to do with my lost family, or maybe that of the previous family who lived there, or maybe I have so many experiences, because in my family, we have a history of producing mediums and prophets, or people who can sometimes see into the future, without any control over how to do it, or when it is going to happen, or sometimes things just come to them. Anyhow, this is my story of Clay, Alabama, and of my possibly haunted house. I hope you will enjoy reading it, and can offer maybe some tips about why these ghosts might be there, or whatever it is inside my house. I have to tell you, when I was young, my parents rented a house in Monmouth, Oregon. I was so happy. We walked all over downstairs. It was cool and I liked it. And like I said, it was an enjoyable experience. Then I took the first flight of stairs. The stairs turned right. They went upright. There was a room there. I felt nothing. Then I went forward. When I walked into the room, I felt a horrible, icky feeling. It was terrible. It was dark. My parents did not know what I felt. I did not tell them. It was just icky and dark. In that room, I had a walk-in closet. I felt so much like there was a woman in that closet. I could not ever go in that closet or place any clothing in there. I got in trouble for not hanging up my clothes, but I knew that there was someone in there. I got in trouble for crawling out the window in that room. They said that they saw a woman jumping out of the window of my room. I swear I never did that. I slept my whole life downstairs that we lived there on the couch. The couch was directly under that room. I had the icky feeling that there was a woman walking up above me. I ran away. They brought me back. When I was 17, my dad told me to go in the backyard and turn off the water on the yard. I did, and when I looked up in the window, there was a woman standing in the window. Forever. I looked at her for 10 minutes, or at least it felt like that. I will tell you that there was a woman standing here that looks like you and I do. I wanted to make sure it was not the moon or some weird thing, but I will tell you for a fact, there is someone that lives in that house. I know it is a pub now. I went there. When I started to tell them of my story, they said they knew. They said everyone who ever lived there knows there's a woman who lives upstairs. I swear it is a bad woman. I can tell you more if you want it. I don't know if you still need stories or are updating the site anymore, but here's what happened to me as I can remember it. I was watching TV late at night one summer in my room. All of the lights were off. The only thing that was turned on was the TV. I was watching a show on tape, and I'd paused the tape. Something caught my attention out of the corner of my eye. I looked, and for a couple of seconds, these pair of eyes were staring at me from underneath my dresser. They were these two red glowing eyes looking directly at me. I was only a couple feet away from the dresser at the time, and I was lying on my bed. Whatever it was had disappeared after only a couple of seconds of looking at it. I quickly turned on the lights, thinking that it might have been an animal, but I did not see anything. There was no way for some animal to get inside my room from the outside. There weren't any open doors or windows for an animal to somehow crawl in. I stayed up for months after that, afraid I would see the thing again. But I never did. I was completely shocked when I looked at it that one night. I wasn't afraid though. I know this because I can still see the image in my mind of what I saw. My family and I lived in this house on Marriott Street in Bridgeport, Connecticut. We were never really sure how many ghosts we had in our house. And before I was born, my parents used to have family get-togethers, birthday parties in our basement that my parents had so beautifully redone. They used to be down in the basement with their guests. When they hear about what sounded like someone running upstairs, When my dad used to go downstairs to look, he used to never find anyone there. Then we have this plastic pitcher with a closed and open top. Well, when we used to go and grab it to pour ourselves some more water, the top would pop off. Then we would put it down. The top would close. Not only the ghost affected everyone in my family, but it affected my brother and I the most. The ghost or ghosts hated my little brother and would bother him in the night saying they were going to kill him. The ghosts loved me. They really didn't love my brother though. Although sometimes when I was in the basement playing video games, I could feel them sitting next to me. Now, I love hauntings and ghosts, but after we sold our house and moved to Wilmington, North Carolina, the ghosts seemed to follow. Even today, I knew that they were there, because sometimes when I look up, I can see a dark figure go over me or past me, and I know they're there. One night my brother and I were watching a movie in our room, and a little boy's voice and a little girl's voice could easily be heard in the hallway behind my door. My parents were asleep, and on the other side of the home, our TV was the only thing on, and when we paused it, we could still hear them. My friend used to live in Mississippi. They had to move to another house due to the rodent infestations in their old house. My friend was about 4 at the time, but she remembers some of the instances, but her mom told me some too. About a week after they were settled in, my friend would wake up in the middle of the night. When her parents came to investigate, my friend told them that she dreamed that all her toys were burning in the toy chest. Her parents told her that they were not, and they went back to sleep. One night, her mom was watching TV alone on the couch, late one night, and there was nobody around. She heard someone say the F word, and it sounded like a lady behind her. She turned around quickly, and nobody was there. My friend also had dreams of a black dog burning beneath her bed. TVs and lights turn on and off by themselves. After a month, they asked neighbors if they knew the history of the home. One old couple told them that 30 years earlier, there was a young couple who had just gotten married who lived there. The young bride was ironing an outfit for a party in the living room and had starched all over. Her husband was leaving the house for a minute to go pick up something from the store, and he flicked a cigarette, and the starch caught fire. It was all over her. He tried to help her put it out, but they died, and the back of the house burned down, and the dog was killed also. Needless to say, they moved out right away. One day, I had an appointment at Clark at noon. I finished the meeting with my client early, and being near Orchard Road, I went shopping. By the evening, I got ready to go back to the flat. The same flat which is in my story, an invisible housemate. I was filled with dread due to the previous experiences there, and as I boarded the train for NS from Orchard Station, my friend Louise called me on my cell phone. We talked for a while, and she invited me over for a movie and dinner at her house. As we were longtime childhood friends, I was delighted to spend some time with her, and with that, I changed the train. Earlier, I was going in the opposite direction in the NS line, and now I boarded the train to Semabwag on the same NS line. I reached Toapeo station, and loads of people rushed to catch a seat. While the train started, I could see from the window a middle-aged woman standing at the platform, just looking inside the compartment. She was wearing a kimba, kind of a bluish grayish white clothing. She had unkempt but jet black hair.
I kept on staring at her because she looked pale white, as if she had severe anemia. I think her face looked almost the same as her blouse. I kept staring at her, as I thought it was a very unusual for any woman to be so pale. And then the train sped away, and I got back to playing Subway Surf on my cell phone. I was distracted by the people getting up to get out at Bishan Station. As the train halted, I saw the same woman on the platform. I got shocked as I clearly saw her on Toa Payoh platform, and she was here again at Bishan at the speed of the train. It was highly unlikely that she reached Bishan Station so fast, and I kept looking at her. But she just stood on the platform without fidgeting when people passed her by. The train doors closed, and she didn't board the train again. And I wondered why she traveled from Toa Payoh to Bishan without any intention to board the train and just stand at the platform. I kept staring at her. She was still standing at the platform, from the window, and the train started in full swing. I again went back to another game of Subway Surf when the lady sitting right next to me elbowed me while opening her purse. I looked at her and she apologized, but that's when I looked towards the right side of the compartment, and to my surprise, the pale woman was standing inside the compartment, near the door. Now, at this moment, I still can't explain to myself how that woman defied the laws of physics, as last time I saw her, she was outside on the platform. The train doors are obviously closed shut before the train starts to speed away. Then how on earth is it possible for her to board the train? And she was clearly standing outside on the platform and no way in the train. And I could see her outside, except when she disappeared from my view, from the window's edge, while I sat there in total shock, rethinking what I am seeing. I still kept staring at her. The passengers near her seemed indifferent about her presence, and she had the same expression throughout the time she was standing there. And her hair, which seemed unkempt from the front, was nicely tied in a loose hanging bun, which came until the center of her shoulder blades at the back. But from the thickness of her hair bun, it seemed like she had long hair. Except for when she caught me staring at her, she moved her head to left to look at me. Her movement seemed as if someone was turning a puppet's head on its neck. At that time, when our eyes interlocked, I felt the dread that I have never ever felt in my entire existence. Her eyes' color were the lightest shades of gray. It was like the meanest of all the eyes I had ever come in contact with. I was filled with the emotions of grief, or something on the lines of envy. I lowered my eyes and fixed it on my cell phone and tried to refocus my mind. But I kept looking at her dress's bottom, and then another electric shock ran through my body. I couldn't even see her feet. Normally, someone who's wearing a kabaya, you can see their feet. But it seemed she didn't have any feet at all. And then the train halted at Angmo Kyo Station. I managed to look up to find out whether the incoming passengers can see her or not. And as I looked up, she already left. She was gone. It looked like a nanosecond for her to disappear, even before the train doors had opened. At that moment, realizing that it's impossible to get out without the train doors opening, and that she vanished in the moment, I rolled my eyes up to look at her. I just froze in terror. I looked around to see if anyone else also saw that or not, but nobody seemed to be influenced by the woman. Or maybe they couldn't see her. At this point, I was horribly scared. This was the second incident for me in which something, in this case someone, vanished in thin air. though I didn't see her vanish, but she was there at one moment, and like a microsecond later, she wasn't there. It wasn't even humanly possible to get out of the train or get into the train in that moment. So I put on my headphones and music and closed my eyes shut so as to not see anything else. I got out at Semabwag Station. At first, she joked that I rode with a Pontiac, and I gave her a smack on her arm. A Pontiac is a bloodthirsty ghost of a woman and quite popular ghost in Southeast Asia. But after calming me down and realizing that I was actually frightened to my core, she told me that the pale woman could be the white ghost of Angmo Kyo MRT station. And when I checked it on the internet, I found out that almost all the stations I crossed today on my way to Semabwag are supposedly haunted, and yes, White Woman is one of them. It was rather amusing, as how can ghosts haunt a train and station for that matter? But it was written that white ghosts targets lonely people. But I was in a filled compartment, so why did I only see her?